Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Expats in Ukraine, brought to you by The Gays. My name is Corey. My guest today, he is from Iceland. His name is Óskar Hallgrímsson. He's a photojournalist, artist, and former Arctic fisherman. Hey Óskar, what's up, man?
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay, before I get into why the heck are you in Ukraine, I like to do this kind of this or that icebreaker, maybe it'll give the audience a better understanding of who you are.
Right.
Okay, so this or that, skier or smetana?
Skier.
Skier. Oh, what's skier? Like I would just
Skier is just like a really. It's a more like it's a pudding like smetana.
Okay, but it's better.
I think it's better because we eat it like on its own. You don't eat just smetana. You eat smetana on stuff. We don't eat skier on stuff. It's like more of a breakfast thing.
It's just eat skier. Okay.
Yeah, we just eat skier.
How about I'm gonna pronounce all of these wrong.
Yeah, great.
Plåkfisker or borscht?
Borscht.
Borscht? What's plåkfisker?
Plåkfisker is like I don't know. You just like a mashed up fish. Ugh, I don't know.
Okay, never mind then. Okay, Björk or Jamala?
Björk.
Björk.
Of course.
Okay.
I know her.
Yeah, this is the only Icelandic person I've ever heard about being from the US.
That is.
Okay,
Yeah.
Reykjavik or Kyiv? Ooh, tough one, right?
Kyiv.
Okay. You answered 3 of them correct.
Yeah.
We'll let you slide on the Bjork one. So now we can get into it. What brought you to Ukraine, man?
I spent most of my career in Asia and, or at least the past 10 years in total. My parents are getting up there, they're in their 80s now. And I wanted to be a little bit closer to home in case something happened. And I was looking for another place to live that's fitting like this, like, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, here comes the curse word, but it's like amazing fucked up scale, which is amazing and also cheap.
Yeah.
So you have to have this balance, you can have somewhere that's pretty cheap, but it's, like very developing country.
Yeah.
And with, but here it's like, was very cheap, but it had everything I needed, like a functioning system and interesting stories. And I was invited to come here for the Kyiv Photo Book Festival.
Okay, what year was this?
2019.
2019, okay.
Yeah, so I was invited to come here for the Kyiv Photo Book Festival. I did a book about sex tourism in Thailand.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk with you about that as well. Yeah.
So I did a book about that, and that I was just sitting there with my book, and a really cute, goofy girl came to my desk, and now I'm married and live here. So.
Oh wow, I think I saw you told me it was like a couple days after you came to Ukraine.
Yeah,
right?
I was 2 days in.
2 days
of
in.
my bachelor life
it was
in Ukraine.
Love at first sight, huh?
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, the Ukrainian girl gotcha right away.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so what were your first impressions of Ukraine? Like you had this idea, it wasn't that expensive. You came here.
Yeah,
and what was your first
I
impression?
looked at some pictures online. Like that's the research. Like on Google, I'm like, whoa, it's so green,
Ukraine,
nice.
wow,
You know,
Europe.
it's like it looks great. But that's about it. And then, I kind of came here, and I knew it was like cheap. And I came here and just day one just really liked the vibe. And day 2, of course, I met my wife, but I didn't know she was going to be my wife then. Oh, yes, I did, of course.
Yeah, she's watching. Yeah, he did.
But, it's just like the vibe, man. It's just like it has just some flavor, some spice to Kyiv that you can't find anywhere else. I just felt it immediately. And it's like, I didn't know what it was. And it was weird that I couldn't put my finger on it. Usually it's like this thing. I love it because there was just something here that I really liked. I was here for 2 weeks my first trip, and then I went for like a month for work all over Asia and into Georgia and stuff like that. And then I came back, met this cute girl again, a little bit more serious.
She wouldn't leave you alone, huh?
And then the rest is history.
Yeah, so you were telling me backstage that you don't really speak Ukrainian or Russian.
No.
So yeah, what I want to ask is like, what is the biggest challenge that you had to overcome while living in Ukraine as like someone from Iceland?
I think that.
Yeah, the language?
I think that,
Okay.
yeah, the language, because I just don't. I mean, I thought I was going to be able to just pick it up by osmosis or something. That has not been the case. I can kind of understand what's going on, but that's about it. I think it's because I really like and love my wife, and we're always together. And she's just like, I just don't, she's just so used to translating for me.
Yeah.
It's just laziness. I tried going to language classes, but like because I work so much, I'm not able to fit it in. Or I've even tried to like make schedule for it, and I'm just too distracted, so I can't do it.
Yeah, like you were saying, like your wife translates for you usually, but if she's not around, have you ever found yourself in like funny situations here in Ukraine?
No, that's just from being doing my job for such a long time, being able to speak with people just with my smile and just with my hands and whatever. I'm pretty good at that. And Ukrainians are just like 90% of the time just are fully able and willing to interact in that way.
Yeah, I had a friend. He was from Brazil. We were like flatmates years ago, like 2018 or something like this. And anyway, he didn't speak any Ukrainian or Russian, nothing. So this one time he was like, okay, I'm going to get off work soon because he works at the flat. He's like, I'm going to get off work soon. So I'll come back to the flat, Corey, and then we'll have some beers. I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? It's like after work. And so I go back to the flat and he's like just finishing work on the laptop. He goes, hey man, I bought some beers, go in the fridge, like check them out.
Yeah.
Let's start pouring glasses. I'm like, okay. And I opened the fridge and he bought kvass. And I was like, do you know what this is? He goes, yeah, it's beer.
No.
I'm like, it's not beer, man. I'm like, it's kvass. He's like, what's kvass? I thought it was beer.
I mean, I love the food here, just the food culture here, and kvass, and not so much, and the kombucha thing is not my thing, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the greatest challenge, of course, despite the war, being in war, that is a completely different animal. But in regards to the culture, I think that's been the major thing. I find culture quirkiness appealing. Some people might find all of these things, some of the weird things about Ukraine that people find weird about Ukraine, irritating or whatever it is. Like, I'm not. I'm like.
So what are these things people find irritating?
I don't know. Like, they just don't irritate me. I mean, I don't like the bureaucracy, kind of like the Soviet era. My wife's grandma calls it the burp from the Soviet Union. No, but I also love Ukrainian ingenuity, because like wherever there's like a bureaucracy problem or old time problem, whatever it is, Ukrainians have found like a privatization way to deal with it. So you just find a service that's good with dealing with this kind of government, whatever it is, and you just hire them to do it for you.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like Ukraine is very technologically advanced as well, like more so than the U.S. Like, well, I just recently got like a new bank here in Ukraine. And I love the app they have. Like, it does everything. Yeah. And then I look at my app that's, I have from my American bank, and it sucks compared to it. Yeah. And every time I have issues with my bank and I want to get a hold of them, I have to literally call them. Yeah. And then I have to wait specific hours because it's in the US, and it's such a headache. And over here in Ukraine, it's like send a message, send a text message, live chats, do everything through the app. Like, I don't know, it's so convenient. I love it.
You can see it with like Ukr probably was pretty shitty before, and then just somebody saw like, there's an opportunity here to make a new company, and so they made this amazing thing called Nova Posta, which is nowhere else. Like, you don't have this cheap mailing service, that's really fast, like next day delivery promised all over Ukraine and stuff like this. You don't have this. And the government app, that's super cool. This Monobank app is really cool. So they're digitally like amazing. Their healthcare system here.
So you're a permanent
amazing.
Resident, right? Through your wife?
I could be a permanent resident because I've been here for so long. But I just do the temporary one because of my driver's license. I have to retake my driver's license. But I'm probably going to do it. I don't like the hassle of like going, because I have to go to Odessa to do it because my wife's... Anyways, this is like the bureaucratic hell that I don't like. But yeah,
Yeah, because I know with DIA, you can only get it if you have a permanent residency, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I tried to register, but it wouldn't let me.
Yeah, my wife has it, and it's great. Like, everything is there, like our car insurance to diploma, whatever. It's everything is in there. That's not the thing back home, because we just have an institution for that. There's no need to modernize a government institution if it provides adequate service, not good service, just adequate service. Here in Ukraine, the service that the government was providing before DIA was so bad that they made this technological leap.
Yeah.
And now they're at the forefront. Like other governments are using this app as
Example, yeah.
example. So there's
that's
so
true.
many things that like I find amazing. Healthcare system here is amazing. You know, you find Ukrainians complaining about their healthcare system until they try other healthcare systems, and they're like, oh, actually, ours is
The US is
amazing.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest is very bad. Like the US is
Yeah, I was
just,
saying the US is horrible, man.
yeah, but the
Forget about it.
Icelandic we have universal healthcare system.
You guys are lucky.
Well, that's the same thing. There's no need to innovate. It's the government institution. All they do is do cutbacks, save money instead of making it a better service for your people. That becomes the thing. And we have waiting lists. Like to see my GP takes me 3 months. Just my
Wow.
GP. Here, I can see a specialist, in this afternoon today.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I have had 2 surgeries here. One emergency surgery, one that I just needed to do, and it was amazing. Like the service and the doctors and everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about so you and your girlfriend, you met her second day.
Wife.
Or I keep saying girlfriend, wife. I'm sorry, wife. So you and your wife, you met her the second.
I'm obligated to correct you.
Yeah, okay. Because she's gonna watch this, right? Okay, your lovely wife.
my very talented, beautiful, funny.
Yeah, okay. You and your wife. So what's it like, dating a Ukrainian girl as like an Icelandic guy? Don't you guys have like different customs? Typically, maybe the parents are different, values. I don't know.
I don't know. My wife is not the typical Ukrainian girl, so I have no idea.
What's a typical Ukrainian girl?
I don't know. Not her. And not in a bad way. She's like, my wife is amazing. Like our communication has been amazing from the beginning. She's just great. Like
Speaks English well, right?
yeah, she speaks English better now than the beginning.
Yeah.
I was forbidden to do any serious conversations with her after 9 p.m. because it would mostly be like, like this.
Yeah.
So it would tell you. But yeah, she's dating. Our dating was just very smooth sailing, and we're just very cool couple, I think.
Well, it sounds like it was meant to be.
Yeah, I mean,
Cupid
for
struck you early.
sure. We are an extremely good team during a bunch of crises. I mean, we were together in lockdown through COVID. We created a very stressful art project that we might talk about later, but together in our living room, we worked together all the time. And then we were together through war. I'm doing quite sometimes horrible stuff with my work. I see a lot of stuff that it's very, very good to have a good partner, and she's amazing in that regard. So
Yeah, speaking of war, what were you doing when the full-scale invasion happened?
I was at home here in
in
Kyiv.
Kyiv? Wow.
Yeah, and then just like as soon as the media found out that I was here.
What do you mean the media found out you were here?
So I used to work in Iceland in media quite a bit,
okay.
and they just found out that there was like me as a media person in Ukraine, and like half of them have my number, my Icelandic number, and they just started calling. And from minute, like not minute one, like hour 2 or 3, it just I had to have my phone charging so it wouldn't like run out of battery, just because everyone was calling. Like
Were you scared at all?
Not really.
Not really. Why not?
I mean, I was concerned, but I was very prepared. And I can tell you another thing about my wife. We made a contract between 2 of us. Is that rule number 1 is that we don't take any decisions in a panic. That is how you die. Just realize that was because I know all these journalist people here. I just saw what's happening, so we prepared a lot if we needed to leave, and so that's the key reason why I kind of didn't panic. It's just because we made a decision not to make any rash decisions, not do any like planning while we're like, Of course, it was scary. I was more concerned about our safety, my family's safety, like.
Well, speaking of your family, how did your family feel about you being in Ukraine, especially during a war?
It's different.
Do they know you're in Ukraine?
Yeah, they do. It was stressful for them, of course. They were scared for me. Some took it better than others. Some took it way worse than others. But I just told them, like, I'm not gonna make any decisions in a panic, and you have to respect my decision. If this is the decision I'm making, that's the decision. I'm not gonna regret anything. That is just a stupid way to go. This is just the way forward. And I've made a decision. I'm going to stay and I'm going to work here.
So it sounds like you plan to live in Ukraine like long term, right? Like
Yeah.
this is your home.
Yeah.
So you don't want to live in Reykjavik. You don't want
No.
to live back in Asia.
No.
Middle East.
Maybe
Maybe
like,
Asia. Okay.
I mean, it's quite a comfortable way of living, but maybe. But my home is Ukraine. I'm going to be here for the duration of the war for sure, and the aftermath. And
Yeah. I mean, you have work here, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have.
So, what is something that you wish people knew more about Ukraine, especially considering all things going on right now?
That I think people like to pigeonhole things. They like to paint a huge, like a whole country under one light. So they hear about corruption and there's like Ukraine is corrupt, and it's like Ukraine is a very broad society in terms of culture, different. Just that's what I would love to people know. It isn't a one thing or a five thing. It's like a whole nation full of people with different values and different everything. But in general, I love Ukrainians. Like Ukraine, I think Ukrainians are my favorite people because they're just so, like, in the beginning of the war, that was amazing, and the fighting spirit and all that. But like the people I've met here that are doing amazing things, creative things. Ukraine is such a, I'm an artist as well. And the creativity here, what I keep telling young artists in Ukraine is like, you have such a beautiful opportunity because you are the creators of the language, the visual language of Ukraine for the rest of time, you know, because modern art is a relatively new thing, like this new modern art. It's a relatively new thing here in Ukraine. So it's incredibly creative and just,
Oh no, totally. No, I totally agree with you. And you're talking about like Ukrainian people. So what would you say the difference would be between like Icelandic people and Ukrainian people?
Iceland is 100% upper middle class people. So
What does that mean?
Almost. I'm not saying like you know, it is a great thing for society to be quite equal in terms. Of course, we have wealth and inequality and all that stuff, but it is the amount of poor people and amount of really rich people is very small. Most of the people are in the middle. The very educated society and all that stuff, which is amazing, but it also kind of gives you this feeling of you have kind of this innate you come with knowledge, you know, whatever it's like you're almost born with it. So you feel Icelandic. When I'm speaking to an Icelandic person about the war, very often I feel they're just waiting for me to stop talking to give me the impressions of what they think about the war, whatever topic it is.
Yeah, okay.
I'm doing like a mass generalization here, but stuff like that. But with Ukrainians, that what I loved about is that here people speak, everyone listens, and then it's back, and it's like a exchange of ideas. They're much calmer. They're much calmer and more engaged and interested in what you have to say. I'm very interested in what they have to say. So there's a bunch of things. But Icelandic people are, because we're a rich nation and we have a lot of amazing things that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the way we've treated this war. Our government is 100% behind Ukraine. Our government is, I think, 50% men and women. We have now women in most of our leading roles. There's actually a new male prime minister because our female prime minister wanted to be president and didn't get it, but that's a different story. So it's a very equal and loving society. Ukraine could learn a little bit from Iceland in that regard, and Icelandic people can learn a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah, from Ukraine. And you were talking about language earlier, because there was like this volcano that went off. Because one of the reasons what I know about Iceland, they have this volcano, and this volcano went off years ago, and I watched it on the news in the U.S. and none of the news anchors could pronounce it. Like, how do you pronounce it?
Eyjafjallajökull.
Eyjafjallajökull. Something like that. Anyway, so what does it mean? Because you were saying like it's like word, like it's like
it
glacier.
Means island mountain glacier.
Island mountain glacier.
Island mountain glacier. Yeah, Eyjafjallajökull.
Yeah. So let's talk about language now, because you were saying that we have a word for war. It's war. But since Iceland, take it away from here. Since Iceland has never been in a war, they don't even have an army.
So, I mean, we have the word for war, stríð, but because Iceland has never been in a war itself. We don't have a military. We don't have this government, like these structures. We don't have any of that. No soldiers, no weapons, no nothing. We are a founding member of NATO, which is super weird because we don't have a military. So we haven't been really covering war other than for history books and just like maybe translating AFP. Very few war correspondence and stuff like that through the ages. The only major covered war was probably the Second World War. And so most of our war words come from the Second World War or older, so Middle Ages or Viking words. Very common for describing modern war with Viking war words. It's super weird. Which is sometimes adequate. Sometimes it sounds like you're making, I don't know, you're speaking from the 17th centuries and, outdated. So this is a huge problem for me because Iceland has I don't think it's a law, but a really strong custom not to use foreign words when writing in media, especially for a respectable media like the one that I'm working for. So I just have to make shit up all the time, So we don't have, especially like with these modern, armor-piercing artillery, saber round, stuff like this. Yeah. It's just, we don't have these words, but I can't just use the English word. I have to find a good descriptive Icelandic word. Luckily, I'm not alone in this struggle. This is a huge struggle for the ones that are actually forced to write about war. So I'm working with people from the foreign ministry, from the Icelandic government institution that handles protecting language. We're a team of people, group of experts, university people, and I confer with all of them when I'm writing. I constantly have them, like at least one or two of them just ready in the chat. Yeah. So I can just send them a message like, how would you describe this word?
Wow. You're part of the evolution of the Icelandic language.
Yeah. And I feel the responsibility for it. And I want to do a good job. And I don't want to just like swing something in there because I know this war is so big, it's going to be covered through the next decades.
Well, totally. And you said the government supports Ukraine fully, right?
Yeah.
So can you expand on that? So like, how have they supported Ukraine?
So first of all, it's just like the public support, like so to openly, condemn Russia and the Russian activity. But they also give money to here. We bought the first lethal aid in Icelandic history. We are taking part in the Czech initiative with buying artillery rounds. So that's one thing. But we are also giving money, like we bought a mobile hospital, stuff like that. Yeah. But we're rich, but we're very small. We're only 370,000 total, and that's 10% is Polish of those. So but we're doing as much as we can. I think.
What is the general consensus from like just people in Iceland? Do they care about like Ukraine? Do they talk about it? Is it just like on TV sometimes? What's it like there?
Unfortunately, even compared to Europe, the interest is quite low, but the support is still there. I mean, of course, we have Russian propaganda starting to take hold in Iceland, unfortunately. Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, but in general, the support is there, and it will continue.
What would you say is a bigger importance for Icelandic people? Would it be kind of the Ukraine war or this, Israel Palestine war?
Israel-Palestine war is a hot topic there, but in terms, probably people don't realize it. It is going to affect Iceland way more, of course, than the war in Palestine. But I think right now, because it's just the thing that took up the space available in the media. But Ukraine war is starting to come back a little bit because we're realizing like, oh, actually, this is affecting us right now. We're starting to take a lot of money out of the government that's not going somewhere else, and you're seeing like Europe is on war footing and a bunch of other factors that will affect Iceland.
Do you think your country can do more to support Ukraine?
Yes,
What can they do?
money, more support. I know that our government is doing a lot. They're actually doing quite well. We have a foreign minister that's very active. I think this is her number one thing. For sure. But she doesn't have full discretion, so she can't just like open up the bank and just pour money into here. But I think as much as they can.
Okay, say there's a person sitting in Iceland right now, they're watching this cast and they want to help. What is the best way they can help, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's finding a Ukrainian organization that's on the ground doing stuff in Ukraine and donating money directly to them. Or if you don't have the money, try to volunteer or something like that. There are so many organizations who are actually like doing stuff here in Ukraine that is actually doing something. Like, don't put your money to the Red Cross or the UN. Just leave that bit completely alone because they're not doing anything here. It's like on the ground, and they can just reach out to me, and I will direct them to good organizations.
Like you were saying before, Iceland doesn't have like a proper word for war or something like this, or like artillery or something like that. It's because they've never been in wars themselves. So when you think about that and you think about there's a war like in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, if I'm an Icelandic person, it's like, why should we care? It's not going to affect us at all. World War II didn't really affect us. Why is this going to affect us? Why should we care?
Well, you mentioned the Second World War. The Second World War made a huge impact on Iceland, but in a positive way, weirdly enough, because before that we were quite poor, and then the Americans came and the British came and they used Iceland as a base. And then after the war, somehow we were able to get the Marshall help, even though there wasn't anything destroyed in Iceland except for a few boats on the way. So it played a huge impact. So if there's a world war, it's going to play a huge impact in Iceland. We're going to be this strategically important place because there's submarines in the ocean and stuff.
But why
like
should people in Iceland care?
So in that regard, we should care because it will affect us. It might, like, we're not probably not gonna have a Russian missile land in Iceland, so that's probably not going to be the case. But we are a part of NATO. NATO is the reason why we are a safe, peaceful country. We don't have any external threats to Iceland, so they should care in that regard. It's just a human thing to do. There's a literal genocide going on in Ukraine right now. Children being stolen in the tens of thousands, and civilians being murdered, and all that stuff. There are number of cities and towns being wiped off the face of the earth, and so it's just a human thing to do. In my regard, that's why I'm putting all my energy in working to cover this war.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always like saying Iceland because you're from Iceland, but I think anywhere you are, like, it's the human thing to do. Like, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's the human thing to do. And like, if you care, like walking down a street with a sign, there's nothing, literally nothing. An emotional, like, monologue on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and like voicing these things, if you're not putting the work into it, it means nothing. It does nothing other
Yeah.
than just maybe make you look good. And so I think that's the thing that we have to kind of realize, is that if you really support Ukraine and not Russia, you have to, not have to, but you have to show it, like actually do something.
Yeah. They say if you're complacent, you're
Yeah.
complicit.
Yeah, I think that's literally the thing. Like, I just realized it's such a stark reminder when you see what's happening in Palestine, which is something we should talk about. I'm not saying I hate it when people pit these things two together. These are two genocides happening on two places on the earth. One is not better than the other. They both deserve attention. But the same people that walk down the street, parked outside our government buildings with the signs for Ukraine, are doing the exact same thing now for Palestine, and they completely forgot about Ukraine. They're not even speaking about it. What changed in the meantime with your work? Very little with your specific action. So
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your photo projects. Yeah, so you've been doing like, photo books, photojournalism in other countries.
yeah,
And you said you were in Asia and you had this very interesting book. Let's see, it was called Hello, Love You Forever.
yeah.
And yeah, this is so you're specializing in people and place photography. So what
Yeah.
inspired you to do that?
So I lived in India for a while, did a bunch of projects around poverty and with a bunch of NGOs and stuff like that. And what is always surrounding poverty is prostitution. And very often it's kind of like this generational prostitution, like in India, for example, like for hundreds of years, like the single family, this has been going on like through the ages. I just think it's like interesting to look at the trade of it. Not There's a lot of stuff that has been going on about the sex work itself, and I just feel like me being a man to cover that aspect of it is inappropriate. I think for me, at least. I'm not gonna shame other photographers that have done it, but for me, I just didn't want to do that. So that's one aspect of it. And then in Thailand, I thought it was just such an interesting city. This place called Pattaya.
Pattaya, yeah.
And it's a city that was made by Americans in the Vietnam War. Pattaya before the Vietnam War was just like a fishing village. And then an American dude opened a bar there, and it grew from there. So it's a city literally built around the sex trade. So I thought it was like a perfect place to go. And that's what I did. I kind of wanted to make a book also without many statements, without like sensational. There's no image that you're going to go like, oh my God, you like this kind of stuff. I just wanted to make like a really quiet book, which is just shows like kind of like this desperation. It's just like, ugh. And
it's like very raw, right?
Yeah, it's relatively raw. It's just like kind of, you got this weird eeriness when you have the book. And everyone has, that's what I love about art and photography and all that stuff, is that it's very subjective. Like you can have one person, when I have exhibitions, I love looking at people that are looking at my work. Some of them are like crying almost when they saw this book. Mm-hmm. And then there was like a bunch of dudes that came and like, they were not crying. They were like, like this, like, some old divorced middle-aged man came up to me and like, yeah, this is really sad. Like, so like, how much did it cost you to go there? It's expensive to be there. Like, stuff like that.
So you always get to meet these girls.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And so like, whatever. Like, and this book is about this manufactured. That's why if you see the cover of the book, it's a picture of a makeup mirror with Barbie on it. And she's all kind of scratched up, and it's like one of those mirrors. When you move it, it blinks.
Oh. Well.
And so I caught it like she kind of looks like this, and like this idea like, hello, I love you forever. It's like, hi honey, I love you.
Yeah,
you go. Like
time,
it's just like a, come on. It's like a business, and everyone is in this bubble of manufactured reality that's not true.
Yeah.
And then everyone knows it's a lie. It's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. And you can see there's a picture of these guys where they're sitting at a table all with their girlfriends, but they're all paying. Everyone is paying for the service. Everything is paid for. And they're all kind of complaining. I remember I was sitting next to them and they were like complaining, oh, my girlfriend this, blah, 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 blah. Like, talk about their wife. Oh, she's nagging me about a new dress, stuff like this. And I'm like, but everyone knows the lie, but they just pretend. It's like a big make-believe, but it's all made out of plastic and
Yeah.
like
So
Barbie. It's just a
what do you
make-believe.
hope people get out of this book?
I don't know. That's the thing.
You just let
I don't
them
hope
decide.
anything. I
All
just
right.
I hope you contemplate something, and that's kind of like my thing. I really love when people contemplate about my work.
Okay. And is there a way I can get the book?
Yeah, you have to visit me.
Oh,
Everyone gets
damn
a
it.
yeah, everyone. No, that's like a thing. Like I don't really sell them. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want it, you can buy it. But like, I don't really sell them. If people come visit me for a coffee and you're invited to my home, you get a free book.
Okay, you see that, guys? If you meet Oscar on the streets,
Yeah,
ask him to go for a coffee. Yeah,
befriend me just for a book.
exactly. So, you were making a book about, I guess, sex workers in Thailand,
Yeah.
and then you came to Ukraine. Can you fill the gaps here for me?
Yeah, so I did that, but like I said, I was looking for a home. I was looking for another home than in Asia because my parents are getting old, and so I was invited for the Kyiv Photo Book Festival to come with my book, and I sat there at the table, and I'm like, really loved Ukraine, and then there was like a cute girl that came to my desk, we started talking, and now I'm married and live here.
Yeah. So, let's talk about like kind of what you do now, because I look at your Instagram and I see these photos of. It's just like really the toughest parts of this war. People with their arms amputated. People with their houses destroyed. Can you talk about something like this for a moment? Like you do work for a media company, you go to these areas and you meet these people.
I think the aftermath of war, like the long shadow of it, that is the thing that affects me the most. Like I mean, I've been to the front many times. I was in Bakhmut 4 times, Solidar, all these places. That is horrible to see the actual fighting, but it's very immediate. But then when somebody loses an arm, it's not going to grow back. If you lose your father, the war, talking to a child that's lost a parent, it's not coming back forever. And so I think that's the most difficult thing for me is to see, because I see also in the immediacy when I'm at the front or close to the front or in these border towns, when these tragedies are happening, you meet these people and you can just see like your life is gonna
Change forever. Yeah.
change forever. And so I think that's the most difficult part about the war. I think people like to ask what has been my most difficult point, and I think that there have been like evolution of that. I've had many most difficult points, and then just like there's a next one. It's not even a worse one. It's just a different version of it. I think the first one was I went to Bucha like on day 2 or something after Zelensky.
Day 2 of liberation.
I think not the liberation because Zelensky was there a little bit later. But when we all saw the pictures, I was there 2 days later. So I mean, I saw everything there. There were people on the streets. They picked up most of the people on the streets, but they were there in cars. And of course, the mass grave, the first one that we saw, and all that stuff. Just horrible. But mentally, I'd prepared myself for that, to see that. And then we did some other work with animals there. That was also really difficult because I'm a huge animal lover. And then we just on the way out, we stopped like at an apartment building that's been completely destroyed. And there were people there like brushing glass and stuff like that. And it was like, hey, let's stop here. And so turns out it was where the Russians had stayed. And I went in there, and it's the first time I saw an apartment that's new, that just couldn't be my apartment. This could be my home. And I saw like new kids' clothes on the floor,
Wow.
and a new crib and a new baby carrier, and like trash everywhere, poop on the floor. There was blood on the floor. There was a blow-up doll that they had taped a bag over their head, and there was like a woman there that said like, yeah, they took people from this building. Like, and I was that was like my first of many PTSD moments. It's like that really just punched me in the face, because I didn't prepare for that. I didn't just see how horrible it was. And so,
Why do you think Russian people are able to do stuff like this?
I mean, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I just see this just says nothing but evil to me. That's just the message. Like, you're just an evil person to do stuff like that.
But it doesn't seem like it's just one person.
No.
It's like many people.
Yeah, it's systematic.
Yes.
Systematic. It's systematic. Like, and how systematic they use stuff like sexual violence and, torture. Torture is like, there's a playbook, because I've been to many places, seen many torture places. It's usually the same modus operandi, like, talk to victims of torture. They all describe the exact same thing. So it is a systematic thing.
What do they describe?
Well, they describe being electrocuted by a wire that they put somewhere, which is, they have like a rotary phone, like it's called a field phone. It's just a thing that like, gives them electric shocks. And then a lot of beatings, fake mock executions, stuff like that. Yeah, it's horrible.
Have you met somebody that really kind of impacted you, or just kind of changed the way you look at everything?
So many people, so many people that I've met. I met a foreigner the other day. It's the longest interview that I've done. It was 3 hours.
3 hours, wow.
Yeah, I mean, just the guy was just so interesting. His name is Sean Pinner.
Oh, I know Sean Pinner.
Yeah.
He was a POW.
Yeah. I interviewed him the other day. It was like, his story was amazing, like incredible. And he talked about it like horrible torture that he experienced. Like, he was like describing the way he butters his toast. He was just he's such a champ, trained soldier.
Yeah, I think I'm in contact with him, so I think next month he'll come on the cast as well. So
Yeah,
there'll
he's
be an
great.
episode with Sean Pinner.
Yeah, he's
But
great.
he has a book as well, and
Yeah,
I asked him about it, and I
Yeah,
want to check
read
it
his
out.
book.
Have you read it?
You've read it?
Have you read it?
No, I
Yeah.
haven't. But he will ask you to.
Yeah. No, I asked him about it. He
Yeah.
sent me like links to where I can get it. And
Right. Yeah. It's just because he goes into so much detail. I've been told in the book. I probably wouldn't have had to have a 3-hour long interview with him. But he was such interesting. That was like a very interesting story. But like, a bunch of civilians from different areas. The people in Bakhmut spent quite a bit of time there with the civilians in like these bunkers underneath. One was underneath a kindergarten. The other one was just like an old boxing gym, and talking to civilians there. That was interesting. In Solidar.
What is the story that stuck with you?
Solidar, I think, just because I mentioned it. I mean, Bakhmut is always going to be a story that going to stick with me. But I think this. It's so hard to pick. So I think evacuators. Like, I did a story about evacuators working in Solidar. I went with them on a few trips in Solidar, which is by far the most insane thing I've ever done in my entire life. Was going there. I mean, we had like cluster munition going off. Like, it was insane. And then I went like 4 or 5 times with them in, and then I was done. Like, this is good. They just went in and in and in. They just dropped off civilians back to Kramatorsk and then back again. And they've been doing that thing, driving into crazy places, saving people every day for the entire war. And that is just insane.
It's heroic, man.
I mean, yeah, it's heroic. I have a little bit of now the change. Like, If you're organized and doing it in a good way, yes. But some of these guys are also being cowboys. They're
Okay.
sometimes drawing the fire.
It's like vigilantes, yeah.
Vigilantes going into the most dangerous area, looking for civilians, trying to get them out, not being able to get them out, and then they just draw fire to that house, stuff like that. You know, it has, but most of the time it's like heroic stories. But you know, we've lost a few of them.
Have you been personally impacted by this war? Like, do you know someone personally that was like
No,
affected?
luckily not. Luckily not. Nobody. Nobody. I mean, I've known people that have known people that like stuff like that, and I've been a lot around military people that have lost their lives and stuff, but not personally. No. Luckily, no.
Yeah, I read that there was a missile strike near your house or something like this. I guess it was the beginning of the war, and then there was like a photo of Klitschko on your
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about this.
Well, they've hit that place like 5 times.
It was in Kyiv, right?
Artyom is just like next to metro station. I can't remember the name. Yeah, I mean, there was a missile strike there in the beginning. Fortunately, because we're right in the center, we're under this air defense umbrella now, and there hasn't been anything close. I've been pretty close to a bunch of stuff when I'm working. I've been in like I was in Kherson when we came under like Graz with a bunch of civilians and rescue people, a bunch of journalists. That was kind of crazy. Artillery strikes in Bakhmut, and of course Solidar was insane. Yeah, I think I have PTSD after this, and I thought I hadn't experienced enough or something. I was kind of shameful from having it, but it's a weird thing. I had to take myself off the line a little bit and go into a little bit of a therapy, and yeah, that was a strange thing to go through.
Yeah, a lot of people after this war, they will have PTSD. That's
Yeah.
just a fact.
But the thing is, like, because I'm working here all the time, I just thought it was kind of burnout, you know, because I was just so, I mean, I'm working 15, 16-hour days always. And I used to say that when I'm going on these trips, when I come back, I'm like a tight guitar string. And then you just like slowly over days, it's like,
Yeah.
goes down a little bit. But then one day I came back and it didn't unwind. Just didn't unwind. It just didn't. I just wasn't able to sleep. I wasn't able to do anything. I wasn't doing anything dangerous or, you know, but it was just crazy. It was a very stressful trip, but not like super dangerous trip. But that was enough to put me over some kind of psychological edge.
Yeah.
I just couldn't relax. And I was like, up here, I was fine. I wasn't suicidal or negative or anything. My nervous system just would not relax. But then I went to a doctor and he's like, "You got PTSD." I'm like, "No, I don't." You know, I just
wow.
didn't. Yeah. So
You got diagnosed with PTSD.
yeah, for sure. And he's like, "You need to like take a little bit of a break, put me on some medication." I'm off of them now. I feel fine. I take way more care in those regards, and you know, mental health is a thing we need to discuss openly with this war. Not only for soldiers, which is, I'm not saying we should 100% put emphasis on soldiers, but there's a lot of other people that are working in this war that have experienced it. Also civilians that are going to experience symptoms of PTSD.
Well, of course. I remember
Yeah.
I was like in European Bucha like a couple months after it was like liberated or something like this. And there was like, you know, buildings that were just blown out.
Yeah.
But then people decided just to move back because this was like their house. And maybe their specific flat was affected,
Yeah.
maybe not affected too much. But they're living in all of this rubble. They walk in that same kind of entrance way that is just like bricks everywhere. And it's crazy. That kind of has to have some like effect on your psyche, you know? Like your neighbor's house is blown up, but yours
Yeah.
is like okay. And
It's a weird thing with fear and all that stuff because like when we're in these frontline villages and towns and cities, even in Bakhmut, like there was like couple thousand people or more right up until the end. And I thought, I don't know, it's just, fear is just a weird thing. And you're living there with no water, no electricity, nothing for months.
Yeah.
And in Solidar, it's like you're living in a basement of like an old Soviet Khrushchevka building with nothing for like 5 months or 6 months. Half of the people in your building are dead or gone or stuff like that. It's interesting. It's, what is going to be the long-term effect of that kind of long-term stress? Like what the stuff that I've experienced is nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's like a Saturday for these people.
Yeah. No, it's wild. And you said that, you're going to the front lines, you were, doing all these evacuations, this photography. It's very important. But what would you say to someone that says, why would you risk your life just for some photographs?
I mean, not to put myself too high of a pedestal, but we are part of history. And also there's war crime going on. Destroying civilian anything is a war crime. If it's not justified by, that's a war crime. So it's important to get as many eyes on it as possible. And I think that's also a message to the Ukrainian government and the military leadership, is that we journalists, we are the gateway to the money that is being given to Ukraine. We're not responsible for it, for sure. Especially, I mean, maybe in Iceland term, I'm the only one. Well, there's a couple that have come here, and there's it's a very small group of people that are covering this war, and public support means government support. That's just how it works. If you don't, and you create the public support by having us on the ground. So it's incredibly important to keep journalists here. Not only me, but to keep access, to give, because that's important.
Yeah, and you were here during the invasion of Kyiv, and you decided to stay in Kyiv. What would you do if they were going to occupy Kyiv? What was your plan?
I mean, we had like a plan one, plan A, B, C. If we saw that we were on some immediate threat, we lived quite close to the train station, and they were trains every couple of hours or something to Lviv. So we were just going to jump on that and go home to Iceland.
But all these trains were full. I remember I had some friends that wanted to get on the train.
Yeah, right in the beginning.
Full.
Yeah, right in the beginning. So I made a calculation. I just thought, like, okay, they are slowed down, stopped. It's going to take them a few days at least to be able to break their way all the way to my house. And that's my assumption was that. And then I just saw Kyiv arming. Everything was like, there was a checkpoint every 5 meters in Kyiv. Everyone had a gun. You weren't outside. And so I just saw, like, they just don't have enough force here. And even if they would have been able to do it, I didn't know about Bucha or Irpin. I was just not naive. I just thought they would behave like human beings. Like not rape and murder and torture civilians. But then, you started seeing images from Mariupol. But then the thing is, like, it happened really quick that I'm not the only one, but I would say that most of the content coming from Ukraine is from me to Iceland, especially in the beginning. So I just felt huge responsibility to let my country know what was going on here, because I knew we would have to play some sort of a role here.
Yeah. So because this reminds me of that movie 20 Days in Mariupol. You've seen this movie, right? This documentary?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, because you said you were in Kyiv, and I just got reminded of it, and I'm like, okay, what would you do? Yeah. So you had a plan, though, right?
Yeah, I had a plan because, like, Mariupol, they had air superiority in Mariupol. They didn't have that here, and they were surrounded in Mariupol. We weren't. And we were quite a long way from being surrounded. I followed what was happening in Gostomel. I thought, like, okay, if they get Hostomel Airport and they're able to break their way through Obolon, we're in real trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't. They were pushed back everywhere. But you could hear the fights. And, also, like I said, I felt responsible for it. So
yeah, when they're retelling, like, the history about this war, the Battle of Hostomel is going to be like the significant moments,
Yeah.
you know, the turning points
Yeah.
on whether Russia kind of takes Ukraine or it doesn't.
It's crazy. Like I was on a trip. That trip, excuse my language, was a total clusterfuck. But the last trip I did to Donbass. But anyways, I met during that trip one of the, I can't say who, a group of special forces guys that were into, you could think for that, for the defense of Hostomel. It was a bunch of people, but you know, they brought down, like the guy that I was talking to, he brought down 2 helicopters. You know?
Wow.
And he's just like, and I was like, with what did you do it? I'll show you. And then just brought out this, what's it called?
Javelin?
No, it's called Ikla or Dikla. It's like
Yeah.
Soviet air defense weapons, like this giant thing. And I was like, I'll show you. Like, yeah, that was very cool. I met them, but yeah, that was incredible. I think Hostomel Airport and the flooding,
Yeah.
and the defense, like at the perimeter of like being able to push them out of Obolon, was incredibly important. And Irpin,
Yeah.
fight for Irpin, fight for Bucha, all that stuff. That was, I mean,
Yeah, I was in because like about a week before the war, I was in Kiev because that's where I was living, and then I kind of understood that they probably might invade. So my girlfriend and I, she was from Mukachevo, so we went to Mukachevo. We're like, oh, let's wait here like a week or two. Nothing happens, we'll come back. Something happens, we could easily go to Europe because it's next to the border of Hungary.
right.
So anyway, so I was watching the news. They invaded. And so we're watching the news, and I'm like, wow, they're probably gonna take Kyiv, and you know, there's so many battles going on. And then once I started to see these videos of them going, they're near Vyshgorod, like in
Yeah.
this northern part of Kyiv. Once I saw the videos of like these helicopters over like the Dnipro and Vyshgorod, and then all of a sudden like they're shooting rockets at them, and the helicopters are coming down into like the river. This is when I knew that I'm like, wow, like Ukraine is fighting back, like they're not gonna take Kyiv.
Yeah, they're
When I
never
see
gonna
videos
take
like
it.
this, when I see, you know, people so inspired, you know, to fight for their city, fight
Yeah.
for their country.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I very early on got access to pretty good open source intelligence, not from the news. I wasn't like everyone, we were using New York Times or Washington Post, all these kind of reputable news services. So I was using that, but then I found a bunch of open source intelligence, very, very accurate. A group of people that were giving really good intelligence about what was actually going on, and I just saw like they're not going to go further. It's just very unlikely that they're going to go further. So that's what I did.
Well, yeah, this is like, is it poor planning on Russia's part? They just, yeah, they
Yes.
thought they were just gonna walk in.
I'm gonna say just yes to all
Yes,
these
yeah.
questions. Like I think that there were so many things. I think like corruption, this being a kleptocracy, like they poor planning, badly led, badly trained, badly armored, no organization, no central organization. Each branch of the military trying to do its own thing without any control or whatever. You know, the leaders of the military are basically just like oligarchs who have nothing to do with, know nothing but, you know, to fight a war, stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know, say if there's photojournalists like yourself, they want to come to Ukraine. What advice would you give them?
So it depends on what you are gonna do here. If you want to like document the war, the dangerous areas, like go get. There is training here you can have here in Kiev, but at least have a tactical medical training or HIFAT if you are able. So that's like, I would say number one, be prepared to save yourself and or others if you need to. That's number one. Have protection, bulletproof vest and a helmet. So if you're going to go to the spicy side of this war, so that's number one. You have to apply for accreditation. You can't work in Ukraine as a journalist without accreditation. You may be in Kyiv or stuff like that, but still, that's the process that you have to do. So that's the advice, and stay true to the truth. That's like number one thing, because there's so much misinformation going on here. That's my biggest fight.
Yeah. So you were talking about the do's, but what are
Yeah.
the don'ts of being a foreign journalist here in Ukraine?
Well, not following what you're being told, like taking pictures of military installations and not following. It's called operational security. guidelines.
yeah.
Yeah, OPSEC. Like that's not, I think, number 1, 2, and 3. You know, because if you take a picture of the wrong thing and publish it, you will kill someone. The Russians will find it and they will use it to target. So that's the most dangerous part of it. The don'ts.
Yeah, I remember there was a moment. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was a moment. Actually, it was here in Kyiv. So there was this the mall. I think it was Retroville or something.
Right, Retroville.
So yeah, someone took a photo of like some APV or some tank, like in the garage.
In the garage. Yeah.
Yeah, and they published it like on social media, and then I guess like the Russians saw it, and then they attacked the mall.
Yeah,
This is like what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm talking about. Like, for that was just a person that did that, but they were still breaking the law. This law does not only apply to journalists. This is just the law. You can't do this stuff, but especially applies to us. And you know, bringing your Western way of working to Ukraine. You know, like this. Like I have freedom of speech, right to travel, stuff like this. When you're like this bratty kind of behavior, there's a reason for most of these things. A lot of the rules here, I kind of not disagree with, but the way they are implemented, sometimes I disagree with access and stuff like that. It's sometimes incredibly difficult to get access to stuff. But in general, I agree with this kind of rules because I've seen it. Like I've seen. You take this happens and then that happens. It's like a very direct relationship between the two. Not only for journalists, like I said, if just a civilian or a soldier breaks OPSEC, it will kill people.
Yeah, and when it comes to, the end of the war, how do you think the war will end?
With a whimper, not with a bang. It will. I was just in an interview this morning with an Icelandic channel. They asked me the same question, like, how does it end? And I'm like, I am not Nostradamus. Like, I can't see the future. What I can see is the support that we're giving now, and it's very easily tracked. One is support, and one without support. With support, the Russians are completely stopped now in Vovchansk, in Chasiv Yar. There are, positional movements, very little. The Vovchansk incursion was 5 kilometers. Now they're 1,200 meters away from the border that they're being pushed to. Why? Because they have artillery, they have weapons, they have everything they need. They're able to shoot to Russia, all this stuff. So that's like, as soon as Ukraine has the means to it, they still have the will and the men and all the stuff like that, even though they have problems with recruitment. And then you just go back 2 months. They didn't have all those things. They didn't have air defense. They didn't have artillery. They didn't have all that stuff. And what happened? Russians were able to take out 2 of very major power plants. The one here in Kyiv and another one in Zaporizhia. They're able to do continuous airstrikes, glide bombs, whatever they wanted on Kharkiv. They were able to mobilize right across the border to do this incursion. Ukraine saw that, couldn't strike them because they weren't allowed to. As soon as they have the means, they're able. And the more means that you give them, for example, more jets, more training for pilots, which is incredibly slow, stuff like that. As soon as you get that, Ukraine will be able to push them back.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm concerned about, it's just the manpower.
Yeah.
Ukraine, they can get all the support, all the aid they can have, but if they don't have the people, then it might be.
It depends on what kind of war you want to fight. Do you want to fight like a meat grinder, kind of throwing people into the death? Kind of war.
From what I understand from all my Ukrainian friends, the war is not going to be over until Ukraine gets all of their land back. There's no negotiating.
Yeah, there's 100. That's my feeling as well. That's the feeling as well.
It's going to take a lot of people on both sides, unfortunately.
So, like, the rest of that thought was like, if you want to fight a meat on meat, like, kind of war, that kind of precisional First World War kind of stuff, Ukraine will never win that. We don't. Ukraine just doesn't have the manpower. They just don't have the numbers. Russia just is much bigger, but we're not. This is not that kind of war. Russia's fighting that war, but Ukraine is not. There is a military rule that you have to have 5 times more people to assault than to defend. But that's when you don't have drones in the air, and FPV drones, which is like a guided missile that will follow you into whatever, trenches, dugouts, basements. You know, they go faster than a car and a motorcycle, whatever. They chase you down, stuff like that. So it's very difficult to assault, to make any kind of major movements on both sides. So there needs, like Zaluzhny said in his paper, and I completely agree with that. We need a technological, breakthrough here, which we're able to do that. But Ukraine can defend. If they have artillery, they can just spot these small waves coming in and just take them out. Most places.
Well, eventually they're gonna have to go on an offensive, you know, to get their land.
Yeah,
back.
but you know they
don't have the 5-1 like you said.
Yeah, but they're not gonna, like, the mistake I think they did in last summer is they bowed to pressure and went ahead with a strategic movement, like a big maneuver movement on assault, and assaulted very heavily defended places, and they got wiped out. A huge portion of their military got wiped out. They weren't ready. They didn't have the air power. They just didn't have the strength to do it. But they bowed down to international pressure, and then they changed the rules after they lost a lot, kept on pushing, even though they knew it was not in vain. It wasn't in vain. They gained territory, which was good, but I think that was the mistake last summer. It's just they weren't ready. They didn't have the means to do it. Now they just don't have the means to do it. So why would they do it then? So they need more means. So they need, first of all, Ukraine needs more air power. That is, I think, the number one thing, because with the F-16s that are coming, there are only a few of them going to be airborne this year.
Yeah,
maybe like a dozen, maybe.
Well, it takes time to train people on this.
Yeah,
this
I think there's going to be 15 or 20 pilots trained. So that's like a crew, let's say. You know, they're not all going to be flying all the time, so it's a very small number.
Yeah, one of my last questions for you, since we were talking about kind of manpower. Say if it comes down to it, and you know Ukraine's like in a really tough spot, and they really, really need people, would you consider joining the military in some capacity?
I'm old and frail. I'm like 42, you know, and yeah, but I'm doing the best I can with I feel like my skill set is being fully used right now, and I think I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. If it was like a huge problem, whatever, I don't know, like it would have to be a decision made at that point. But so as of now, I'm doing this, but I think just to like widen it up, if you were thinking about like Europeans and stuff like that, Icelandic people, which is my country, we don't have a military, we don't have this culture, and we can do much more with the things that our skill set is. We have incredibly talented, educated populace. So and we've got a bunch of money, even though we're small, and we can use that money to support people here in Ukraine, civilians and military.
Yeah, there's other ways to help, is what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways to help rather than holding a gun. You can support the military in so many ways that are equal to the fighting, you know. Yeah. It's because there's someone who needs to be doing it. If that role is not filled by a Ukrainian soldier that has the skill set to do that, well, you can.
Yeah, I just met like some people that they were just felt so inspired by what Ukraine is doing, and they want to help in some capacity.
Yeah.
And you know, if they don't have military experience, then they do like tactical medicine or something like this.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're kind of doing combat medicine. And
yeah, some of the people, like there's so many different paths that you can take here. I mean, I know journalists that have come here, then like, of course, because the war really affects you when you're working in this field, and you really have to keep your emotions in check. And some people just like get drawn in and start in the volunteering side, and then from the volunteering side they might enlist. And I know a guy that like went from pulling people out of buildings as an evacuator, and now he's working for GUR. So it's like
Wow.
it's like different paths.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think we get a stop here. But is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about that we didn't have a chance to touch up on?
I mean, I just think important that Ukrainians know that Russian propaganda is telling you there's nobody on your side. It's absolutely not true, and they're telling us, the foreigners in Iceland, that there are also nobody supporting Ukraine, while everyone is. And so most of this idea that Ukraine is losing its support is, it might lose interest, but that's just a news cycle. If you look at the political sphere of Europe, the military side, there's ample support on both sides. And I think Ukrainians should know that we're here like to support you. And also just my socials, like if you want to follow my work, you can find me on Instagram. It's Skari, Skari. I do almost daily some kind of updates about what's happening in the war. Be warned, it's a middle-aged guy talking into camera, so beware. But I try to do the best I can to educate my country and to try to give factual information for Ukrainians as well.
All right, great. So yeah, I guess I'm going to do the outro right now. So thanks so much for watching at home. We appreciate you showing up for this episode of Expats in Ukraine with my guest Óskar Hallgrímsson.
Hallgrímsson. Yeah, it's actually Hallgrímsson.
Hallgrímsson.
Yeah.
Yeah, my Icelandic is the worst. But yeah, if you like this episode, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment if you want to know more about Óskar's work, or if you just want to chat with me. I'll be chatting live during the premiere of this Thursday, 6 p.m. So yeah, you'll probably be chatting with me right now. I don't know why I was saying that, because you're going to be watching it right now. But anyways, thanks so much for joining us. And Óskar, come over here. I want to give you a handshake. I usually do this at the end of every... All right, cheers, man. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.